I'm 78 now, and when I tell people the day my life split clean in half, they expect something loud: a car crash, a diagnosis, a funeral. But it was quieter than that. It was a sentence, said with a smirk, the kind of sentence that lands soft at first and then bruises deeper every time you replay it. He stood in our kitchen, my kitchen, the one I had kept running like a heart for 12 long years, and he looked at my hands, still smelling faintly of lavender oil, and said, "You're just a housewife with a silly little hobby. Nobody wants what you make." Then he filed for divorce like he was canceling a subscription. And just like that, a man I had fed, funded, forgiven, and folded around, took the house, emptied the account, left me holding the debt like it was my inheritance. He walked away with his new woman, young enough to be my niece, loud enough to make sure the world noticed him, and I walked away with a suitcase, a battered laptop, and a kind of shame that makes your skin feel too tight. I didn't scream in the courthouse. I didn't beg in the parking lot. I didn't throw myself at anyone's mercy. I went quiet, not the quiet of defeat, the quiet of a woman picking up every shattered piece of herself and deciding she would rebuild in a way no one could ever take again. Back then I was 36, but grief can age you overnight. I looked older in the mirror that first week, my eyes hollowed, my jaw clenched, my shoulders carrying the weight of disbelief. I moved into my grandmother's old duplex on the edge of town, the one he used to mock. He called it my dusty little relic, laughed about burning it down for insurance like cruelty was comedy. The place smelled like old wood and time. The porch sagged. The water heater coughed like a dying man. The windows rattled when trucks passed. But it was mine. And when you've been stripped down to nothing, mine feels like oxygen. On the first night I slept there, rain tapped the roof like impatient fingers. I lay on a thin mattress with my coat folded into a pillow, and I stared at the ceiling stains and tried to understand how someone can share a bed with you for years and still leave you like you were never human. I tried to pray. I tried to cry, but my tears were stuck behind something stubborn. In the morning I rolled my sleeves up and began. I scrubbed floors until my knees screamed. I watched tutorial after tutorial, learned how to replace pipes, how to patch plaster, how to coax life back into a place that had been neglected. Every time I fixed something, I felt my own bones reset a little. Every time a hinge stopped squeaking, something in me stopped begging. And in the front room, by the window where the light fell warmest, I set up a folding table, not because I had some grand business plan, because I had one thing left that still felt like me: a bowl, a spoon, a recipe my great-aunt taught me when I was a girl. Shea butter softened over a pot of steam, honey warmed until it smelled like summer, herbs crushed between fingers until your hands carried their perfume like a secret. I had made little balms and scrubs during my marriage for years, not to get rich but to feel real. Something about creating with my hands, something that didn't require asking permission, kept a small part of me alive even when he was slowly shrinking me. He used to scoff when he saw the jars lined up like soldiers. "You look ridiculous," he'd say, "like you're playing entrepreneur." I smiled then, the way women do when they're trying to keep peace. But peace that costs you your dignity is not peace, it's hostage negotiation. After the divorce, I finally understood. My work wasn't childish. My work was survival training. I had just over $2,000 left. The rest was gone, sucked out of accounts before papers were signed, buried under legal language and smug smiles. I had debt I didn't recognize, bills in my name I never authorized, late fees that arrived like insults. My hands trembled the first time I logged into my online banking and saw how empty it was. But what I did have was time and anger, not the screaming kind, the steady burning kind that keeps you awake and moving. I had my best friend Nadine too. God bless that woman. Nadine was the sort of friend who doesn't ask you to stay positive. She shows up with gloves and trash bags and a flashlight and says, "Okay, what's first?" She helped me rebrand my little operation. Not glossy, not fancy, just clean, honest, bright. We took photos on a bedsheet hung by the window. We printed labels on my old printer. We ordered jars in bulk and laughed at ourselves like laughter was a rope we could climb out of the pit with. I packed 20 starter kits and mailed them to small beauty reviewers and wellness bloggers, women with loyal followings, the kind who actually used products instead of posing with them. Every night I sent emails until my eyes blurred. Every morning I mixed batches until my arms ached. the duplex began to smell like peppermint and lemon and hope, and the whole time he kept talking. Oh, he didn't call me directly most days. That would have required courage. Instead, he performed his cruelty where it could reach me through other people, little jokes in comment threads, posts about women who think lip balm makes them CEOs, smug remarks to mutual friends that floated back to me like secondhand smoke. I didn't respond. I let him talk. I let my hands answer. The first break came like lightning. A local reviewer posted a before and after using my turmeric bar. Her caption was simple, almost casual, something like, "This stuff actually works." But her followers trusted her, and trust is more valuable than advertising. I woke up one morning to a screen full of orders. Not 10, not 20, 87. I sat on the edge of my bed and stared at the numbers until my eyes watered, not because I was shocked, because for the first time since the divorce, I felt the universe whisper, "Keep going." Nadine screamed so loud the neighbor banged on the wall. We laughed until we cried. Then we got to work. I packed every order with my own hands. I wrote a short note inside each box because I didn't want customers. I wanted community. I wanted people to feel like they were holding something made by a real woman who had fought for her breath. Orders kept coming. 50, then 70, then 100. I reinvested everything. Better molds, better labels, faster shipping. I took free online courses late at night, the glow of the laptop painting my kitchen walls like moonlight. I learned marketing, inventory, fulfillment, taxes, all the boring necessary scaffolding that turns a hobby into a fortress. And then the invitations started. A small business feature, a morning show segment, a wellness YouTuber saying my soap was sunlight in a bar. That phrase stuck to my ribs. Sunlight, something warm, something honest, something you can't fake. I trademarked it. I built around it. And slowly the duplex became too small for the life I was growing inside it. I rented a little studio space with proper ventilation, real racks, a label printer that didn't jam every 10 minutes. I hired help, women who needed second chances, women who were rebuilding too. There is a special kind of sisterhood in a room full of women packing boxes like they're packing their old pain away. While my business grew, his life began to shrink. I heard it the way you hear distant thunder, through other people, through sideways comments, through the tone shifts when someone says, "Did you hear about, he lost his job." Downsizing, they said. His younger wife didn't like struggle. The designer bag stopped, the vacation stopped, and she vanished like she'd never existed. He tried to keep his pride polished online, posting about consulting opportunities and new chapters, but you can't filter desperation. He started texting me again, little hooks, little threats dressed as warnings. "Be careful, fame is temporary. I made you, you'd be nobody without me." I never replied. Silence is a powerful language when you no longer fear being misunderstood. Then one afternoon, I saw him outside my studio window. He looked thinner, paler, like the world had finally stopped applauding him. He walked in slowly, pretending he just happened to be nearby. He looked around at my shelves, my drying racks, my staff moving with purpose, and he said, almost reluctantly, "Looks like you're doing well." I nodded, polite, professional, like he was a stranger inquiring about a product. "Can I help you?" I asked. He tried to smile. "I was thinking maybe you need some strategy help. Business seems to be booming. I could consult, temporarily, until I get back on my feet." The audacity of it almost made me laugh out loud. The man who called my work pathetic now wanted it to pay his bills. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't gloat. I simply said, "You told me no one wanted what I made. You told me I didn't have it in me." He opened his mouth to backtrack. Stress, misunderstanding. Time passed. I looked him dead in the eyes and said, "It wasn't long ago. It was clear. And I heard you." Then I pointed gently toward the chairs in the lobby. "You're welcome to sit and wait. I have a full schedule today." He stood there, stunned, because he expected drama, tears, anger, begging, but I wasn't a stage anymore. I was a building. He left. I didn't follow. The next year I bought the building I'd been renting, signed the papers with a hand that barely trembled, not because I was nervous, because I could still feel the ghost of the woman who once begged a judge to believe she mattered. Buying that building felt like taking my name back in ink. And then, because the universe has a wicked sense of humor, my property manager emailed me. A man wanted to rent an office on the ground floor. He was starting a freelance consulting business. Name, Maurice Langston. I stared at the email so long I could hear my own heartbeat. Poetry doesn't always come in pretty words. Sometimes it comes in paperwork. I sat with it overnight, not because I was conflicted, because I wanted to be sure my decision came from wholeness, not spite. In the morning I wrote back, "We are not accepting new tenants at this time." That was it. No speech, no reveal, no gotcha, just a door that did not open. I knew though,
I knew he would sit in his car and look up at the storefront with my logo on it, and finally understand that the woman he called useless now owned the space he needed, and for a long time that felt like enough. But revenge, real revenge, isn't the moment someone else falls. It's the moment you stop needing to watch them fall. Time passed. My brand expanded. I opened a boutique, then another. I started hosting workshops for women starting over, women who had been told their best years were behind them, women who had been reduced to just a wife, just a mom, just a little hobby. I watched them sit in my loft with notebooks open, eyes wide, holding their own futures for the first time, like a fragile flame, and something inside me softened, not toward him, but toward the old me, the woman who stayed quiet so long, the woman who thought love meant shrinking. I began to forgive her, not because she was wrong to hope, because hope is a beautiful thing, but because she didn't deserve what he did to her. Then came the festival. Every town has one, don't they? That yearly weekend where the streets close and music spills out of speaker towers, and vendors line up with tents and string lights. For us it was the Summer Heritage Festival, part market, part celebration, part community heartbeat. Families came out in bright clothes. Kids ran sticky with cotton candy. Old couples held hands like they'd been doing it forever, and my team set up a booth right at the center of it all, under a banner that read "Sunlight in a Bar," glowing in the afternoon heat. I stood there with my staff around me, young women, older women, women who'd rebuilt their lives after storms, and I watched customers sample lotions I'd created in a dusty duplex after a divorce that nearly swallowed me whole. A reporter came by, then another. Someone asked for a photo. A teenager asked me to sign the inside of her notebook like I was someone worth remembering. I smiled. I thanked them. I kept moving. I wasn't doing it for applause. I was doing it because I had turned pain into something useful. That night, after the festival, my feet ached and my hair smelled like smoke from food trucks, and the sweet perfume of shea butter. I sat alone in a quiet hotel room, the city humming below, and I felt something settle in me that I can only describe as peace. Then there was a knock. One of my staff members held out an envelope. "This came to the booth," she said. No return name, just said urgent. I took it, closed the door, sat on the edge of the bed. The envelope was plain. No perfume, no pretty handwriting, just a stiff, nervous neatness. Inside was a letter typed, but the signature at the bottom was unmistakable. Maurice. 3 pages, single-spaced. A confession that tried hard to sound like humility but still smelled faintly of ego. He wrote about regret, about fear, about how he didn't know how to be beside a woman who might outshine him. He said he had been proud of me now. He said he hoped I could forgive him. He said he missed me. He ended with a sentence that made my stomach turn, not because it hurt, but because it revealed how little he had actually learned. Maybe we can talk. Maybe we can find our way back to what we were. What we were. As if what we were was anything worth returning to. I folded the letter carefully and placed it on the nightstand. Then I did something I never expected. I laughed. Not a cruel laugh. A tired, astonished laugh. The kind you make when you realize a chapter is truly over. Because the letter didn't bring me pain. It brought me clarity. It reminded me how far I'd traveled. I picked up my journal. Yes, I still keep one, even at 78, and I wrote one sentence. He misses the version of me who was easy to break. Then I stood up, walked to the bathroom, and washed my face slowly, the way older women do when they're preparing to sleep without carrying the day into their dreams. I looked at my reflection, the lines around my eyes, the silver in my hair, the calm in my gaze. I thought about all the women who had written to me, who had come to my workshops with trembling hands, whispering, "I don't know if I can start over," and I understood the most important truth of my whole life. Starting over isn't glamorous, it's not a montage, it's not a miracle, it's 1,000 small choices made while your heart is still bleeding. It's getting up when no one is clapping, it's making a plan while you're still shaking, it's believing yourself when the world has trained you to doubt. The next morning, I didn't burn the letter, I didn't frame it, I didn't send it back. I tucked it into a file drawer labeled past, beside old court documents and early product labels from the duplex days, not as a trophy, as a reminder. Some people will only see your worth once it has a price tag, and that isn't love, that's late-arriving greed. A week after the festival, I spoke at a women's entrepreneurship luncheon. The room was full of perfume and soft laughter, and women in blazers who had fought battles you couldn't see. After my speech, a young woman approached me, maybe 25, the age I was when I first married him, and she asked, "How did you do it? How did you survive being erased?" I looked at her face, so hopeful, so afraid, and I told her the truth without polishing it. I stopped asking people who didn't value me to tell me who I was. I listened to my hands instead. They never lied. That night, alone in my quiet home, I made myself a cup of tea and stood by my window. The streetlight outside made the glass shimmer. Somewhere down the street, a couple argued softly. The sound carried on warm air. Somewhere else, someone laughed. Life moved on in its messy, ordinary way, And I thought about the old me again, the one in the courthouse with a suitcase, the one in the duplex with dust under her nails, the one stirring oils at midnight, because she couldn't sleep for the ache of being discarded. I wanted to reach back through time and touch her shoulder. I wanted to tell her she would become someone she couldn't imagine, not because the man who hurt her would finally regret it, but because she would finally learn to love herself in a way no man could interrupt. I'm 78 now. I don't chase apologies. I don't chase closure. I don't chase anyone who needs to lose me to see me. I have my business. I have my women. I have my peace. And sometimes, late at night, when the world is quiet enough to hear your own heartbeat, I remember the sentence he said in that kitchen, how he tried to make my work small, and I smile, soft and almost sad, because life has a way of answering people like that without raising its voice. It answers with time, with proof, with a woman who keeps building, and the sweetest part isn't that he came back, it's that I didn't need him to. She looked at me like she was afraid I might disappear if she blinked. Her voice was barely above a whisper when she said, "You're the woman from the festival, the one with the sunlight soap." I nodded, and her shoulders dropped the way they do when someone finally believes they are safe. She didn't cry, she just exhaled, long and shaky, like she had been holding her breath for months. That moment stayed with me, long after we left the shelter, long after the boxes were unloaded and the thank you hugs were exchanged, because I recognized that look in her eyes. I had worn it myself once, after the divorce papers, after the house was gone, after the mirror stopped recognizing me. That was when the story changed again. Not louder, deeper. I stopped thinking of my business as proof. I started thinking of it as a bridge. The following weeks blurred together. Orders increased. Press requests followed. People wanted the comeback story, the glow-up narrative, the neat version where pain turns quickly into profit. But I didn't rush it. I never rushed again. Rushing is how you abandon yourself. Instead, I began hosting small evenings at the boutique. No cameras, no sponsors, just folding chairs, tea, and women who needed a place to speak without being corrected. Some were young, some older than me, some had bruises still blooming under sweaters, some carried shame the way others carry handbags. They talked about husbands who drained accounts, about partners who mocked dreams until they sounded childish, about years lost trying to be palatable. I didn't interrupt. I didn't advise unless asked. I just listened. Listening is a radical thing when someone has been silenced for too long. One night after everyone left, I locked up and stood alone in the darkened boutique. The shelves glowed softly under the security lights. Bottles lined up neatly, labels straight, a life built with intention. I pressed my palm flat against the counter and felt something settle in me. Not pride, peace. A month later, the city invited me to speak at the Autumn Arts Festival. Bigger crowd, bigger stage. I hesitated before saying yes. Not because I was afraid, but because I was careful. I had learned that visibility without boundaries can become another kind of cage. But I went. The stage lights were warm. The air smelled like roasted nuts and autumn leaves. I stood there 78 years old now, my hair silver and unapologetic, my voice steady. I didn't talk about him, not by name. I talked about beginnings that come after endings. I talked about quiet work. I talked about how being underestimated can become a secret advantage. The applause wasn't thunderous. It didn't need to be. It felt sincere. Later that evening, as lanterns lit up the festival grounds, I saw him again, across the way. Standing near a food truck, hands in pockets, watching the crowd, watching me. He didn't approach, and for the first time that felt like respect. Or maybe surrender. Either way, it didn't matter. I turned back to the women laughing near my booth, to my staff packing up products, to the young girl helping her mother count change with serious concentration. That was where my life was happening now, not in his regret. That night back home, I sat at my desk and opened a new notebook. I didn't label it doubt. I didn't label it proof. I labeled it after. I wrote about the shelter woman's eyes, about the festival air, about the way my hands no longer shook when I signed contracts or closed doors, about how freedom doesn't arrive with fireworks. It arrives quietly when you stop waiting for permission. I wrote one last thing before closing the notebook. I am not what survived him. I am what I became without him. Now when people ask me if I ever miss him, I tell them the truth. I miss the woman I was before I learned to be afraid. But I honor her by never going back. I am old enough now to understand that some love lessons arrive wrapped in cruelty, and some endings are not punishments but releases. I didn't win because he came back. I won because I didn't need him to.